With the possible exception of Tony Abbott, the man with just about the hardest job in the world right now is the Finance Minister of Greece. It's teetering on the brink of economic collapse and just this week avoided defaulting on its massive debt by doing a deal with its European creditors. The man who has to persuade ordinary Greeks that the government knows what it's doing is the Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis, the Greek-Australian, former academic, left-wing maverick and style renegade who's changing the way Europe does business. Europe correspondent Mary Gearan spoke to him in Athens.
Bonjour, how do you do?
I'd like to be less in the limelight because I'm in the limelight for all the wrong reasons, and of course the wrong reasons being the Greek and European crisis. So wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to interview me?
He's the man rewriting the rules of the Eurozone. A self-described errant Marxist, challenging the status quo with his suit-spurning, plain-speaking ways, in what some have dubbed a charm offensive.
Hi, thank you very much. We're just going to get these for you.
So you're from the agency, right?
Yeah, that's right. Do you mind
I am who I am.
very Hollywood
I was not elected in order to become somebody else simply because I became the Minister of Finance.
Oh, beautiful view you have here, straight on.
Yes, beautiful view, indeed. I understand that it is disconcerting for many people, especially colleagues of mine overseas, that I call a spade a spade. Perhaps this is where the influence of Australia comes through.
Varoufakis lived in Australia for 12 years, teaching economics at the University of Sydney. He still makes regular visits to Sydney to see his young daughter.
There is no doubt that Australia has left an indelible mark on me. Most people who know me see that, even better than I can see it.
In what way?
Well, in the way in which I dismiss nonsense without caring too much about decorum. Maybe I was influenced by my great admiration of Paul Keating, but at the same time, my criticisms of his, this was the recession we had to have back in 1991, because I don't believe that anybody has to have a recession if one calibrates one's macroeconomic policy correctly. But yes, the Australian influence is all over me, but my daughter probably knows better about this than anybody else.
The radical left Syriza party took power a month ago on the back of widespread public anger against austerity measures imposed by Greece's creditors to rein in the country's $460 billion debt. Now Varoufakis and his government face a mammoth task as they attempt to appease their creditors, their own disparate left-wing coalition, and those who voted for them, crying out for change.
There are people that are going to sleep hungry tonight. There are children that are doing their homework without electricity. And that is because of an implosion of the Greek economy, the worst in Western European history during peacetime, worse than the Great Depression.
When Greece was taking on its creditors in negotiations, it was portrayed here as a David and Goliath battle. Support for the Syriza government rose exponentially. Greece wanted to assert its sovereignty. Now that Athens has given ground to Brussels and Berlin, the wave of energy that swept old politics from power here in Greece may well turn against the young government. Just how long will support for this government last?
In Brussels last week, Varoufakis hammered out a compromise deal. In return for tax and public sector reform, the country gets a 4-month extension to its loan, a freeze on new austerity measures, some relief in its fiscal targets, but not much else. Greece also agreed to strict supervision by its creditors, something Syriza had said it would not allow. It's been described as a defeat. Varoufakis rejects that.
I don't see it as a defeat of anybody. I see it as a victory for Europe, that we have established the democratic principle that the new government should have its mandate listened to, and that should be given an opportunity to be the co-author of its destiny.
You say you're co-author of your destiny, but this deal still means that Brussels can veto cash. Still, they say that they could well make more demands, that this is just the starting point.
Indeed, it is the starting point.
Doesn't that mean that
But
they
it is
hold
not
the
bad
cards?
to have a starting point, because when we were elected, we were told that even imagining that we must negotiate or that we can negotiate the deal that we inherited is a kind of sin.
If you want to know how the past few years have affected Greece, then this is one of the best places to come. We're on the outskirts of Athens, and this is one of about 60 clinics set up around the country, set up by volunteer doctors. In here, you'll hear stories of desperation. You'll hear why people were so passionate to reject the Brussels bailout deal.
About 100 people who can't afford healthcare or drugs come here every weeknight. This woman's sick husband committed suicide, she says, because the family was selling everything to pay for his medication. Dr. George Vickers says one woman came to him with untreated breast cancer because she couldn't afford medication. She died soon after.
The face of the woman is inside me for all my life.
Dr. Vickers supports the government, even stood as a Syriza candidate in the last election. But he says the people's trust in the government has a limit.
We fight the Syriza if
Syriza doesn't come through,
yes,
then people like you will fight Syriza.
Yes.
Greek Australian Spiro Mandelaris comes here for his heart medication. He says right now people understand the need to compromise, but not for too long.
If this Greek government can't deliver on what it said, which is relief for its people, how do you think the Greek people will react?
They're going to be very disappointed, and I don't think he stands the chance to survive as a prime minister. And given the time of a year or two, yes.
I hope that
Back in his office, Yanis Varoufakis wholeheartedly agrees.
if we fail to deliver, I'll fight myself and the government. This is our job. Our job is to be judged according to performance.
How
And this is
long?
how democracy should work.
What's the deadline and for how much? What do you want to achieve? What can you say to the Greek people you will achieve, for instance, within the next year?
What we want to achieve is a stabilization of the Greek economy first, a sense of propriety, a sense of social justice, a sense that we are, at long last, a government that is prepared to remove unworthy privileges and to make those who've never paid their fair share pay. And by the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, to start growing the Greek economy in an inclusive way that benefits the greatest victims of this crisis.
Varoufakis is confident his government can deliver. All it needs is a bit of time.